Somewhere between the stars and sleep, a small light moved through the dark and unnoticed at first, then slowly discovered. They called it 3i Atlas, the third known visitor from another star. Not born of our sun, not tethered to any orbit we could name, just passing through. It came quietly, like a thought that drifts across the mind before dawn. No roar, no blaze, no announcement, only the soft mathematics of its motion, an arc through the solar wind, a whisper across gravity's endless sea. Telescopes caught it for what it was, a faint, distant reflection, sliding between planets as if it had done so countless times before. For billions of years, it had wandered. Past forgotten systems, through the cold dust of cosmic memory, atoms older than our Earth clung to its surface. Ancient ice, fractured stone, the residue of suns that lived and died before ours was even born. It was not here for us. And yet, for a brief, delicate moment, our eyes turned toward it, and in doing so, we made it something more, a mystery that belonged to us. There was a strange calm in knowing that something unbound had entered our neighborhood. It reminded us that our solar system is not sealed. It breathes, it exchanges, it receives. Every so often, the void sends a visitor, as if to remind us that we are part of a larger conversation, one that stretches across light years carried by silence itself. As it drifted closer, it revealed almost nothing. Its light did not behave as we expected. Its path was smooth, elegant, unconcerned with our questions. Even its name, a 3i Atlas, sounded temporary, a placeholder for wonder we could not define. Now it's gone, back into the black that waits beyond the edge of the sun's reach. But the memory of its passing lingers, a cosmic footprint that refuses to fade. And so as you breathe and let your mind settle into the quiet, ask yourself, what was it really? This visitor in the dark? A rock, a remnant, a message? Or something older than words reminding us that mystery itself is alive? From the darkness it came, and to that same darkness it returned. But the silence it left behind, that's where our story begins. Before 3 Atlas ever entered our skies, it drifted through a silence so complete that even light took centuries to cross it. The space between stars is not empty. It is almost empty, and that almost is what makes it sacred. A few scattered atoms for every cubic meter, a single photon wandering alone for lifetimes. It is a place where time forgets to move and sound has never learned to exist. Imagine that silence. A stillness so vast that entire civilizations could rise and fall within one heartbeat of its duration. Out there, beyond the faint light of any sun, temperature ceases to mean much. Heat itself becomes a rare event, a whisper rather than a flame. Cosmic rays drift by, striking ancient dust like faint rain on an infinite window. That's where 3i Atlas began its journey. Not in the comfort of a system like ours, but in the wilderness, a region of eternal night. It may have been born from a collision in another galaxy's nursery of stars, or torn from a dying system as gravity shifted and flung it outward. For millions, perhaps billions of years it wandered. No destination, no light to warm it, only inertia, only the pull of distant gravity wells that barely noticed its existence. If you close your eyes, you can almost feel that journey. The weightlessness of it, the sense of falling without falling, the patience of something that has forgotten beginnings and endings. Space between stars is both graveyard and cradle, filled with relics of creation, frozen fragments of what once was. Every grain of dust carries a memory of formation. Every drifting shard a story we will never read. Atlas was one of them, a quiet survivor of cosmic history, moving with no one to witness. And yet that same silence that held it also preserved it. No atmosphere to erode its surface, no collisions to break it apart. Only the gentle sand blasting of time itself, particles of light brushing against it for eons. It was sculpted not by violence but by loneliness. If you could float beside it, the view would not change for millennia. A single dim star growing smaller behind you, another barely perceptible ahead. Between them, a black so deep it defies the idea of color. It is in this endless dark that 3i Atlas found its shape, a body defined not by creation, but by endurance. When it finally crossed into the outer edge of our solar system, it must have been almost indifferent. We were just another glow in the distance, another temporary warmth. But for us, it was everything. Because to see something from elsewhere is to remember that elsewhere exists. The silence between stars is not just the absence of sound. It is the canvas upon which all existence is painted. It is the background hum of being, the pause between cosmic notes, and every now and then, that silence allows one of its travelers to cross our path, as if to break the monotony of eternity with a brief, delicate gesture. Atlas was such a gesture, not loud, not grand, but intimate. A whisper through the dark, a ripple across the stillness that reminded us how thin the borders of our world truly are. For the astronomers who would soon find it, that silence was about to end. The void that had hidden it for eons would soon release it to light, to observation, to names and theories. A pattern of photons would betray its presence, and humanity, ever curious, would look up again. Soon, machines on distant mountains would record its faint signal. Soon equations would replace silence with interpretation, but for now let it drift, weightless, nameless, untouched. Because before discovery, there is always wonder, and before sound, there is always silence. In that silence, a story was waiting, not just of a rock or a comet or an object, but of connection, the bridge between our small glowing world and the infinite dark beyond it. And in one quiet night on Earth, someone saw a flicker in the data, a faint movement against the stars, and wondered, what if this isn't one of ours? It began as many cosmic stories do, with a flicker on a screen. Not a blinding light or a cinematic event, just a faint, irregular signature in the data stream of a telescope scanning the night. Somewhere in a quiet observatory beneath the Earth's rotation, a researcher leaned closer to a monitor, blinking away the fatigue of another long night. And there, between stars cataloged and familiar, was something new. At first it looked like nothing. A stray detection, a piece of cosmic noise. But as the data aligned, the movement held. It was real. And it wasn't moving the way things from here should move. This is how humanity first met 3I Atlas, not with fanfare, but with curiosity. The Atlas survey in Hawaii had seen it first, a small dim point sliding across frames taken days apart. Astronomers began to whisper in messages and data logs. Another interstellar object, maybe? A third visitor after Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019. If confirmed, it would be history again, quietly repeating itself. The discovery spread like a slow dawn across observatories worldwide. Professional astronomers, students, enthusiasts, each turned their instruments toward the coordinates, eager to see what this new traveler might be. Telescopes on Earth adjusted, satellites recorded light curves, computers traced its motion through space. In the midst of the quiet routine of observation, something alive stirred, that rare sense of cosmic proximity. The world outside the labs went on as usual. People commuted, oceans shifted tides, clouds wandered the sky. But among those awake beneath domes of glass and steel, something sacred had entered their nights. The awareness that the universe was once again reaching in. Atlas wasn't bright. It wasn't beautiful in the way comets are, with tails and color and motion that can stir emotion even from the ground. It was fainter, colder, almost indifferent, and yet to those watching that indifference was the beauty. It was a relic of other suns, sliding past ours like a message written in a language we hadn't yet learned to read. Soon, orbital projections began to take shape. Mathematicians mapped its path backward, tracing its entry from interstellar space and forward, predicting its escape. Its speed told the story first. Too fast to be bound by the sun, too free to stay. It was not a comet returning from the Oort cloud. It was not an asteroid tugged by planetary gravity. It was a visitor, by definition temporary. In lab, screens glowed with plotted points, data turned into prophecy. You could almost hear the breath between keystrokes, that quiet reverence scientists sometimes feel when numbers suggest something magnificent. Every discovery carries two moments, the first of finding it, and the second of realizing what it means. The first moment had passed. Now came the second, and in that realization came both thrill and humility. We were looking at something that had likely been traveling for millions of years before our species ever began to speak. We were intercepting a memory. The light bouncing off 3I Atlas had touched its surface perhaps only hours ago. But that surface itself was ancient, marked by a history older than our planet's continents. News outlets wrote short blurbs. Online forums buzzed with speculation. But within the scientific community, There was a quieter awe, not the rush of breaking news, but the patience of cosmic context. Each time we detect an object from beyond the sun, we're reminded that the solar system isn't isolated. We are porous. We are part of something much larger, something we can measure only when it brushes past us by chance. And as those early nights passed, data continued to accumulate. The light curve deepened. The trajectory confirmed. The name 3I Atlas was formalized. The 3 for the third interstellar object, the I for interstellar, and Atlas for the observatory that caught it. Simple, precise. And yet beneath that precision, something poetic lingered. A human attempt to label what was never truly ours. Imagine being that scientist on that night. The hum of the computers, the clicking of the tracking systems, the stillness of the air outside. Imagine realizing that a piece of another star's story had entered your field of view. That you were, in that moment, watching the galaxy visit you. No one can ever quite describe that feeling. The blend of disbelief and surrender, of knowing you're witnessing something that will pass, that you will never touch again. It is the most human kind of encounter, brief, distant, meaningful. Soon the world would begin to measure, to compare, to calculate, because curiosity always follows wonder and numbers follow awe. The moment of discovery was over. Now came the effort to understand and to turn the poetry of that flicker into science. The silence that had carried 3I Atlas was now filled with questions, with radio chatter, with equations whispered into the dark. We had found something from beyond our world, but to truly see it, we would first have to measure the unknown. When the first wave of wonder settled, the measurements began. Numbers, not poetry, would define what 3I Atlas truly was. And yet, within those numbers, wonder lingered, quiet, persistent, refusing to dissolve. Astronomy at its heart is the art of deciphering faintness. Every photon carries a story, but it arrives tired, worn down by the distance it has traveled. The task of the scientist is to listen carefully, to reconstruct meaning from whispers of light. So that is what they did. Night after night, observatories from Chile to Hawaii to South Africa turned toward the same invisible point. Data streamed in, brightness levels, angular momentum, spectral reflections. Each value was a clue, a fraction of truth. They measured how fast it spun, how much sunlight it reflected, how gravity from the sun bent its path. They noted deviations, small, almost imperceptible nudges that suggested something about its shape, its composition, or perhaps something entirely unexpected. Even the smallest error could bend the entire picture. A misread pixel could shift an orbit by millions of kilometers. So the work became meditative, patience as method, repetition as prayer. Every few hours, one more column of data, one more confirmation that the visitor's trajectory was not like anything from our own celestial family. Soon, the trajectory formed a clear story. 3I Atlas was not bound by the sun's gravity. Its velocity was hyperbolic, the unmistakable signature of an interstellar origin. The sun had caught it briefly, pulled on it gently, and then let it go. Like a breath inhaled and exhaled by the galaxy itself. To some, that was enough. The data had spoken. The equations proved what intuition already knew. This was another traveler, one more piece of the galaxy brushing past us. But others looked closer. There were inconsistencies, faint yet stubborn. Its brightness didn't match its size. Its apparent acceleration didn't follow the clean predictions of gravity alone. The numbers hummed with a low note of dissonance, one that couldn't be ignored. This is where science meets humility, when you realize that even perfect measurements can lead you only to the edge of understanding, that the cosmos is not obligated to make sense on human terms. Astronomers compared models, adjusted assumptions, reran simulations. Was it shedding dust? Venting gas like a comet's tail too faint to see? Or was its surface reflecting light in unpredictable ways? Fractured, uneven, alive with rotation. Each possibility felt both plausible and incomplete. The data itself seemed to whisper, "I am not what you expect." And so the conversations began, long, careful, sometimes heated. In every lab, in every online discussion forum, in quiet late-night Zoom calls between researchers across time zones, each graph became a small battlefield between certainty and doubt. Between those who saw simple physics and those who saw something else. But beneath it all, a single truth remained steady. 3I Atlas had come from beyond the reach of our sun. That alone was enough to change perspective, because to measure an interstellar object is to measure time itself. The data you hold is not just light, it is memory, traveling across epochs to reach you. For every recorded value, there were 1,000 things that could not be recorded. The color of its birthplace, the stars it passed on its way here, the forces that broke it free from its home. Science could map the orbit, but not the journey. It could measure the speed, but not the solitude. Still, the attempt mattered. Measurement is how we participate in the universe, how we listen. Each photon absorbed into a detector is a handshake across light years. Each equation is a translation of the universe's language into ours. And yet, as the models refined, the questions deepened. How could something so faint, so small, travel so far and still survive? Was it solid rock or porous ice? Had radiation sculpted it into something smooth or shattered it into 1,000 fragments bound by inertia alone? We didn't know. We still don't. And that somehow made it beautiful. The act of measuring had not solved the mystery. It had made it deeper, richer. The closer we looked, the less we saw. Because between every data point there is a silence, a space science cannot fill. That is where imagination steps in, carefully, respectfully. Because sometimes the truth of a cosmic visitor is not what the instruments say, but what we feel when we realize how little we can truly claim to know. Pause. In those final weeks of observation, as 3I Atlas moved farther away, its light dimmed almost beyond reach. The numbers became uncertain again, swallowed by noise. We had measured all we could, and the mystery remained intact, perhaps intentionally so. It was as if the universe had shown us just enough to awaken curiosity, then turned the page. A quiet reminder that every discovery carries a shadow, the part we can never quite define. And in that shadow, human imagination began to bloom. Because when science pauses, storytelling begins. Next came the theories, the speculations, the human need to fill the silence with meaning, to decide for ourselves what we thought we saw. In the weeks after its discovery, 3I Atlas became more than a data point. It became a canvas, a mirror for human imagination. Every telescope image, every plotted curve, every flicker of light was interpreted, debated, even romanticized. We began to see not what it was, but what we wanted it to be. Some said it was a comet, plain and unremarkable. A frozen relic flung from another star's outer disk, no different in essence from the icy wanderers that circle our own sun. It vented gas, perhaps just faintly enough to skew its motion. Simple, understandable, the kind of mystery that can be explained by patience and physics. Others weren't so sure. The brightness didn't fit the pattern of a comet's reflection. It seemed too stable, too deliberate. The spin rates implied odd proportions, as if the object was elongated, maybe even flat. Memories of Oumuamua resurfaced, that first interstellar visitor whose strange acceleration had sparked countless debates. Could 3I Atlas be another like it? Another shard from a distant system, shaped by forces we barely understood? And then came the wilder thoughts, Rain whispered, half joking, half hopeful. Perhaps it wasn't a rock or a comet at all. Perhaps someone said it was a fragment of technology, a relic from a civilization long vanished, drifting endlessly between stars. A dead sail, a broken probe, a message written in orbit and silence. Scientists cautious by training smiled at the speculation. But behind every dismissal lingered something softer, the recognition that even the impossible has its allure. We are, after all, creatures who dream beyond evidence. The unknown is a mirror where we search for our own reflection. Theories multiplied. It might have been the fragment of a disrupted planetesimal, a piece of a world shattered by gravitational tides, or an icy core coated with organic dust. Some suggested it was a hydrogen iceberg, exotic, ephemeral, dissolving as it approached the sun. Each explanation illuminated a piece of the puzzle but left the rest in darkness. As weeks passed, the line between knowledge and wonder blurred. The telescopes gathered more light, but light alone could not reveal intention, origin, or meaning. We stared at the same photons, yet each person saw something different. Perhaps that's the secret truth of cosmic discovery. The data may be shared, but the interpretation is deeply personal. We project ourselves onto the universe, our myths, our longings, our quiet wish to not be alone. Three-Eye Atlas became a story about us as much as about itself. To a scientist, it was a problem to solve. To a poet, it was a metaphor, the stranger that passes through, leaving behind questions instead of answers. To a dreamer lying awake beneath the stars, it was proof that somewhere out there the galaxy still moves, still breathes, still touches us when we least expect it. And in that mix of skepticism and wonder, humanity's oldest tension reemerged, the one between understanding and believing. Science asks, what is this? The heart whispers, what if? The what-ifs multiplied across quiet nights and glowing screens. What if Three-Eye Atlas carried secrets from another world? What if it had witnessed the births of stars, the deaths of suns? What if it had passed near civilizations that never knew we existed? Theories came and went like tides. Papers were written, models adjusted, data refined. But no matter how many questions were asked, one thing remained constant. The object itself did not care. It neither confirmed nor denied our curiosity. It simply moved, serene and distant, obeying laws older than our species. As it slipped farther from view, its identity remained unresolved. Was it comet, rock, or relic? The answer might not even exist, at least not in the language we use to describe things. And yet this uncertainty became its own kind of beauty. Because not knowing forces us to keep looking, to stay awake a little longer beneath the sky, to listen for meaning in the faint hum of starlight. Soon our theories would meet resistance, because in the data something strange still lingered. A flicker, a rhythm, a pattern that refused to align with expectations. Light itself began to misbehave, and once again the mystery deepened. At first no one noticed. The light curve of Three-Eye Atlas, that subtle rhythm of brightening and dimming as it spun through space, seemed ordinary. But the deeper the data went, the more the light began to whisper. Oddly, it wasn't just the brightness changing. It was how it changed. The pattern lacked symmetry. Peaks came too soon, valleys too deep, like a heartbeat that stuttered on its way through the void. Every rotation should have told the same story, but this one told a slightly different one each time. For a while, researchers assumed it was noise, an artifact of faint signals and distant detection. But when teams compared observations across continents, the irregularities remained identical. The light curve itself seemed alive, responding to something unseen. That was when astronomers began to feel that quiet shiver, the one that comes when precision meets something it cannot explain. Some suggested it was tumbling chaotically, a shard of irregular rock caught in a spin that never stabilized. Others thought it might have been venting faint jets of gas, each burst briefly pushing sunlight in unpredictable ways. Yet there was a rhythm inside the irregularity, a recurring pulse buried in the randomness, as if the object had its own quiet metronome. The data plots began to look less like mathematics and more like music. Patterns repeating at intervals too clean to dismiss, too ambiguous to define. And then one night, a telescope in Chile picked up a faint polarization signature, a small but measurable twist in the reflected light. It wasn't much, but it hinted that the surface of Three-Eye Atlas might be something unusual. Not pure ice, not ordinary dust. Something crystalline, maybe metallic, something that played with light instead of merely reflecting it. That discovery ignited a new wave of speculation. If it reflected light too efficiently, perhaps that was why it seemed to accelerate slightly as it left the sun's domain, sailing ever so gently on sunlight itself. A natural light sail, or something made for that very purpose. But even that idea raised more questions than it answered. For such precision, its shape would need to be thin, vast, and deliberate, and yet no one could confirm its form. The brightness variations refused to match any simple geometry. It was as if the object wanted to stay undefined. Astronomers grew quiet in their emails, more cautious in their publications. Words like anomalous, unexpected, and non-gravitational acceleration began to appear. The language of science, careful, hesitant, struggled to contain the language of wonder. When you watch the universe closely enough, you begin to notice that even light can feel mysterious. It doesn't just show us the world, it hides it too. Because every reflection, every flicker is filtered through time, distance, and the limitations of our instruments. Light can deceive as easily as it reveals. Perhaps Three-Eye Atlas wasn't behaving strangely at all. Perhaps we were simply seeing it from the wrong perspective. through a lens too human, too narrow. Maybe its erratic glinting was normal, just not for our kind of normal. Still, the data refused to smooth out. The curves defied simplicity. There was a pattern in the noise, like a secret trying to remain hidden just beneath detection. One researcher described it as light that behaves as if it remembers something. No one quite knew what that meant, but the phrase lingered. Light that remembers. A haunting idea, because light, after all, is the only traveler older than time as we perceive it. Every photon from that object had left its surface months before it reached us, carrying the faintest memory of what once touched it. When the light from 3I Atlas finally dimmed beyond recovery, astronomers were left with a strange silence. A file full of numbers, a handful of anomalies, and a feeling that something had brushed past the edge of comprehension. It's one thing to lose sight of a comet. It's another to realize that what you've lost might not fit comfortably within the boundaries of what you know. The object faded, its light curve flattening into the background of stars. The telescopes moved on. The world forgot. But those who had watched closely, those who had traced the strange flicker across months of sky, carried the unease with them. That gentle cosmic whisper. Something about this was different. And in that quiet gap between explanation and understanding, new theories began to form. Slowly, cautiously, almost guiltily. What if the strangeness of its light wasn't just about reflection or geometry? What if it was a sign of its origin? Because the deeper scientists looked into the behavior of 3I Atlas, the more one question began to echo, softly but persistently. Where had it come from? And what had shaped it before it found us? The search for origin would become the next obsession. Not because we needed to prove anything extraordinary, but because the human mind cannot rest where mystery lives. When something enters our skies from another star, it becomes a mirror for our oldest longing, to know where we fit in the vastness. And so, with 3I Atlas fading into the night, the gaze of science turned outward again, to the stars, the nebulae, the galactic maps. Somewhere out there it had begun, and perhaps by tracing its path backward through light and time, we could glimpse the cradle that released it. To trace the path of something that comes from beyond the stars is to follow the faintest of echoes. 3I Atlas had passed through our solar system briefly, too quickly, too silently, leaving behind only the smallest mathematical footprint. But in those numbers, astronomers saw a trail, a thread that could, if followed backward with enough care, lead home. They began with its orbit. Every gravitational tug from every planet, every wobble caused by solar radiation, every fragment of uncertainty, all had to be unwound like the knots of a cosmic thread. If they could reconstruct where it had been, perhaps they could glimpse where it had come from. The simulations began to run, millions of them. Each one was a different version of reality, a model where 3I Atlas had entered our solar system from some particular direction in the galaxy. Each version told a slightly different story. Some led toward the familiar stars of the local bubble, the empty region of space our sun drifts through. Others pointed further, toward distant clusters whose light takes centuries to reach us. Still others suggested origins so deep in the galactic disk that the numbers began to blur into probability. The truth was slippery. When you trace something backward through gravity, time works against you. Every small error grows enormous like ripples in reverse. Within just a few million years, its path became unknowable, lost in the churning motion of the Milky Way. But still, the effort mattered. Because tracing 3I Atlas wasn't just about finding a birthplace, it was about reaching for connection. Every interstellar object is a message written in motion. To know where it began is to glimpse another solar system's story, to imagine the sky of another sun. Astronomers began to compare chemical signatures, searching for hints in the reflected light. If they could determine what minerals made up its surface, they could match those fingerprints to the stars that formed planets of similar kind. Spectral analysis offered faint clues, traces of carbon compounds, silicates, maybe organic residues, the same building blocks found throughout the Milky Way. It seemed, in its essence, ordinary. And yet that ordinariness was profound, because if it was ordinary, it meant the extraordinary truth that we are not unique. That our solar system is just one workshop among countless others shaping similar worlds, similar stones, similar stories. Atlas might have been born beneath the light of another sun, one long extinguished or far beyond our reach. And still a fragment of it had come here. Imagine for a moment that home. A system not unlike ours, with planets circling quietly, icy bodies in the outer dark, perhaps a young star once shining bright before dimming into maturity. Something had disturbed that system, maybe a passing star, maybe the slow instability that time guarantees. And from that disturbance, debris had been cast outward. Worlds broken, comets flung free, among them a small fragment, 3I Atlas. It drifted for ages through darkness so deep that even starlight faded. For millions of years it wandered without witness. Until one day, if day means anything in galactic terms, it crossed a thin, invisible boundary and entered our own solar system. No intention, no purpose, just momentum, patience, and time. It's strange to think that such a simple journey, the glide of rock and dust, can hold such emotional weight. But it does, because in tracing its orbit, we are really tracing our own longing to belong to something larger. Even after weeks of simulations, astronomers could not agree on a single birthplace. Some leaned toward the Carina Sagittarius arm. Others suggested it came from above the galactic plane, an odd trajectory for something ejected from a planetary system. A few speculated that it might have originated in a cluster once dense with stars, a nursery now dispersed by time. In the end, it seemed 3I Atlas might have no single home. Perhaps it was a wanderer of wanderers, a drifter that had passed through multiple systems before reaching ours. A cosmic refugee, a traveler without allegiance. There is a kind of melancholy in that thought, to imagine a piece of matter so ancient, so unmoored, that no world claims it. And yet there's also comfort, because in the vastness of space, movement itself is a kind of belonging. The galaxy is a web of motion, everything moving, everything touching, everything connected, however briefly. So, tracing its path was not about finding an origin anymore. It was about realizing that origin might not matter, because perhaps what defines a thing is not where it began, but where it passed through, how it changed, what it reflected, what light it left behind. By the time astronomers finished their final orbital models, 3I Atlas was already gone. Its faint light lost to interstellar darkness, its data archived, its story folded into the larger narrative of discovery. But somewhere in those files and charts there was a quiet conclusion, that the universe is full of such wanderers, that our skies will host them again, and each one will remind us that we, too, are traveling through something endless, nameless, and beautifully shared. Tracing 3I Atlas backward became a meditation, on time, on distance, on what it means to belong in a universe without boundaries. And as scientists closed their simulations, one question remained unspoken but persistent. If this fragment from another world could reach us, then what else might be traveling toward us even now unseen? Next came the realization that 3I Atlas wasn't just a discovery. It was a signpost, a reminder that our solar system is not isolated, but open, porous to the tides of the galaxy itself. And that realization changed how we looked at everything afterward. When you trace the orbit of a traveler like 3I Atlas, you eventually realize something humbling. It never really arrived here. It merely passed through. And in doing so, it reminded us that nothing in this universe is ever truly still. Every object, every planet, every grain of dust, every star you can see tonight, is moving. Our solar system itself drifts around the galactic center at more than 200 kilometers per second. The Milky Way, in turn, sails through the local group, pulled by unseen gravities toward galaxies even farther away. And beyond that, clusters and superclusters slide along cosmic filaments, vast rivers of matter streaming through the dark. There is no anchor. No center, only motion. Our Atlas was part of that flow, not an intruder but a reminder. It was the galaxy itself reaching through our sky saying, "You are not separate from me." The same forces that set it adrift are the ones carrying us. Its journey and ours are parallel lines drawn by the same invisible hand. Astronomers began to look outward differently after its passing. They started to map not just the positions of interstellar visitors, But the larger architecture of motion, how stars exchange matter, how systems shed fragments into the dark, how the galaxy breathes in and out across eons, it's easy to forget that space, though it seems empty, is a constant conversation. Particles, radiation, magnetic fields, all moving, all trading places. When you zoom out far enough, even the stillness of the night sky becomes a slow-motion storm of migration. From that perspective, 3I Atlas was less an anomaly and more a messenger. It carried proof that the galaxy is not made of isolated worlds but of travelers, fragments, comets, molecules, and maybe even microbes, crossing the interstellar sea, linking one sun to another. The cosmic ocean is not empty. It's alive with exchange. In time, a new kind of study emerged, the astronomy of drift. Researchers began to wonder how many other visitors had come and gone unseen, how many fragments of alien worlds might already rest within our comets, our dust clouds, even our atmosphere. Perhaps Earth, too, carries traces of other stars, gifts from the same galactic tide that brought 3I Atlas our way. There is a certain peace in that idea, that even across the void there is sharing, that the galaxy, for all its silence, is a network of giving and receiving, a slow exchange of matter that unites everything, everywhere. When we gaze into the night sky, we are not looking outward. We are looking through the motion of countless lives. The starlight that reaches us tonight has been bent by 1,000 gravitational hands, filtered through dust clouds that once were worlds. Even the air we breathe on carbon, oxygen, iron is the echo of stars that drifted, died, and scattered their remains into the dark. Everything drifts. Everything moves. And in that motion, everything connects. There's a moment in every cosmic observation when the science becomes something quieter, almost spiritual. Not in the sense of belief, but of belonging. The realization that drift is not chaos. It is choreography. The galaxy is a dance too large for us to see in motion, but 3I Atlas gave us a single visible step in that ancient rhythm. It curved through our system with elegance, momentum, and inevitability, a reminder that beauty and impermanence are often the same thing. For a few months our paths crossed. Our telescopes turned toward it. We measured, we speculated, we wondered, and then it was gone, back into the deep, following a path that may never repeat. But the drift continued. Even now, as you listen to these words, the Milky Way is turning. Our sun is gliding through its orbit, and countless unseen travelers are moving across the dark between stars. Somewhere, another fragment like 3I Atlas is leaving its home, beginning a journey that may take millions of years, a journey that might one day end with someone else, on another world, looking up and asking the same question we did. What was that visitor in the dark? The galactic drift is not a story of departure or arrival. It is a story of continuity, of the eternal movement that binds everything in motion to everything else. To drift is to participate in time. To move is to exist, and in that sense we are all interstellar objects. When you think of 3I Atlas now, think of it not as something that left us behind, but as something that showed us we were never truly still. That every night as the Earth spins beneath the stars, we too are traveling, part of the same grand motion that carried it across the galaxy. We measure drift with numbers, but we feel it with awe. And somewhere in that overlap, between the measurable and the meaningful, lies the quiet truth that perhaps the universe isn't expanding away from us, but with us. There comes a moment after staring long enough into the night sky, when the vastness no longer feels distant. It begins to fold inward, until the silence between stars feels like the silence inside your own breath. That's when you realize, stillness is not the absence of motion. It is the harmony within it. When 3I Atlas passed through our solar system, we measured its speed, tens of kilometers per second, a pace beyond comprehension. And yet to it that motion was invisible. To drift endlessly through space is to move without feeling movement. It never knew acceleration or rest, and only continuity. Perhaps that is the universe's most secret form of calm. The galaxies turn, stars orbit, atoms vibrate, and yet beneath all that motion lies an equilibrium so complete, it feels like peace. In physics, we call it balance. In human terms, we call it stillness. We are born into motion, the spin of Earth, the orbit of our planet, the drift of our sun around the galactic core. Even as we sit still, we are moving at unimaginable speed. Every second of stillness we experience is in truth a surrender to the cosmic current. That's what 3i Atlas reminded us of. That to be still is not to stop, but to align. When the astronomers finished their measurements and the telescopes fell silent, there was a peculiar melancholy in the labs and observatories. They had captured everything they could, brightness, velocity, spectra, and yet, something remained unmeasured. The feeling of quiet awe that came when they realized they had been part of a moment that would never happen again. Science is about repetition, but the cosmos rarely repeats itself. Each event, each alignment, each passing visitor, all singular, all ephemeral. To observe is to bear witness to something unrepeatable, and in that there is stillness. Sometimes in the early hours of the morning, the astronomers who studied 3i Atlas would step outside their domes. They would look up at the same stars their instruments had dissected, but without graphs or equations, just eyes, breath, and wonder. The hum of the observatory would fade behind them. The air would be thin and quiet. And in that stillness, the scale of it all would return, and not as fear, but as serenity. Because if everything is moving, then everything is also connected through that movement. There are no lonely travelers in a universe made entirely of motion. That realization changes how you see everything, not just the cosmos, but life itself. Our thoughts drift. Our memories orbit moments. We are systems of energy and gravity, emotions and time. Our rest is motion viewed from another frame of reference. When the world feels chaotic, we often seek stillness as escape. But maybe what we're really searching for is resonance, a way to move in rhythm with something larger, to align with the same quiet order that guides comets and stars. And Atlas didn't resist its trajectory. It didn't fight its drift or try to stay. It followed the path written into its momentum, and in that acceptance there was grace. We often think of cosmic objects as indifferent, as if the universe is cold, mechanical, detached. But what if detachment isn't coldness at all? What if it's peace, the kind that comes from existing without needing to define why? Stillness in motion is not about pausing the universe. It's about realizing the universe never needed to pause to be at peace. Think about it. The light of 3i Atlas traveled for years before reaching us. It endured collisions with interstellar dust, magnetic distortions, and the emptiness between stars. Yet when it arrived intact, quiet, unwavering. That is what stillness looks like in the language of physics: stability across distance, constancy through change. Perhaps then, the calm we feel under the stars isn't separate from motion. It is motion, just slowed to the rhythm of awareness. When we watch the night sky, we are not looking at chaos. We are looking at an orchestra too vast for our ears to hear. And every now and then, an object like 3i Atlas glides through the frame, a single note in the symphony, clear and transient, reminding us of the beauty of impermanence. As it vanished back into the dark, we didn't lose it. We simply fell out of synchronization with it. It continued its journey, and we continued ours. And somewhere in that divergence there was peace, because to drift apart is still to belong to the same whole. Stillness in motion. That is what the stars have always taught, and what visitors like 3i Atlas come to remind us. The galaxies move. The stars burn and fade, and even in all that endless activity, the universe remains at rest, a complete, balanced whole. There is a silence that follows every discovery. It is not the silence of absence, but of completion. When 3i Atlas faded from our telescopes, that silence fell over the scientific community like twilight. The last data points were logged, the last frames analyzed. And then, there was nothing more to measure. It had come and gone. Another cosmic traveler swept through the lens of human awareness, brighter for having been seen, yet unchanged by our observation. For a time, it existed in our minds more vividly than in the sky itself. It became a symbol of distance, of wonder, of how brief our contact with eternity can be. Because that's what it truly was. A meeting between the finite and the infinite. Between human curiosity and the endless unfolding of the cosmos. And in that intersection, something beautiful happens, not to the universe, but to us. Scientists archived their findings, wrote their papers, drew their conclusions. But late at night, many of them admitted something quietly humbling, that the memory of that visitor still lingered. It wasn't about data anymore. It was about feeling, the feeling of catching a glimpse of something that did not belong to us, something that existed long before we knew how to look. To measure the universe is one thing. To remember it is another. That's what 3i Atlas left behind. A kind of gravitational memory, not of matter, but of meaning. We remembered what it felt like to witness something unrepeatable, to see motion on a scale so vast it made our own seem tender and small. We remembered that we are participants in something immense, and that even our smallest questions reach further than we imagine. The object itself, by now, has moved beyond the reach of our instruments. It drifts quietly through interstellar space, a faint ember of sunlight cooling as it goes. Every hour carries it millions of kilometers farther from us, its path bending gently under the gravity of nothing in particular. If it could look back, though of course it cannot, it would see our sun as just another pinprick among billions. Perhaps even that light would fade soon, replaced by the endless soft darkness of the galaxy between arms. And maybe that's what makes it so haunting, because though it will never know us, we will always remember it. The memory of passing, that is what remains. In that memory lies a question. How many other wanderers have passed unseen? How many travelers brushed our corner of the cosmos before we learned to watch the sky carefully enough to notice? And how many more will come long after we're gone? Each one is a fleeting intersection, a cosmic handshake between strangers. They carry stories of stars long dead, worlds long lost, and distances we can barely comprehend. They are the universe's quiet way of reminding us that time doesn't erase connection. It simply carries it onward. When 3i Atlas passed us, it didn't alter its course. It didn't slow down to announce itself. It simply moved, but in doing so it left a mark not on space but on awareness. That's the paradox of cosmic memory. The universe forgets everything except its own motion. But we, brief as we are, remember. We build meaning out of moments the cosmos considers ordinary. We find poetry in gravity, emotion in orbit, and reflection in data. We make the infinite personal, and in that act we bridge the distance between stars. When the last whisper of 3 Atlas vanished from our sky, the universe did what it always does. It continued. No announcement. No conclusion. Just motion unbroken, and yet, somewhere deep within the quiet of our species, something had shifted. We began to look at the stars differently, not as distant objects, but as reflections of ourselves. Because that's what interstellar visitors truly are, reminders that even in a cosmos defined by endless separation, connection still finds a way. Years passed. New comets were found, new telescopes built, but none carried the same hush that 3i Atlas left behind. It wasn't about the mystery of what it was anymore. It was about what it meant. That maybe not everything needs to reveal itself. That some truths remain beautiful because they remain incomplete. In science, we call that uncertainty. In poetry, we call it wonder. But in the quiet hours before sleep, we simply call it peace. Out there, the galaxy spins like a slow waltz. Every rotation takes hundreds of millions of years. And yet, to the stars, it's just another graceful turn. Our sun moves with it, dragging our tiny world along. Each orbit a single heartbeat in the life of the Milky Way. So when you think of 3i Atlas, remember that we are not watching from the outside. We are inside the same motion. The same cosmic current that carried it past us is carrying us too. Perhaps that's the quiet secret of existence, that nothing ever truly leaves. It simply moves beyond the horizon of our seeing. In a way, that's how memories work too. They drift, fade, change form, but they never stop moving through us. When we remember 3i Atlas, we're not recalling an object. We're feeling the trace of an encounter, the soft, gravitational tug of wonder, and that feeling, that calm recognition of our place in something infinite, is the same thread that runs through every act of discovery. It's why we look up, why we ask questions that have no end, why we seek patterns in the dark, not to find control, but to feel connection. Some say space is silent, but listen long enough and you'll realize the silence isn't emptiness, it's balance. The hum of cosmic background radiation, the whisper of charged particles, the quiet dance of gravity, all part of a language older than sound. A language the universe speaks fluently. A language we are only just beginning to hear. When we build instruments, We are not inventing that language. We are learning to listen. Each telescope, each radio dish, each mathematical model, a translation device for awe. And through that translation, the cosmos becomes not something out there, but something within. The stars are not foreign. They are family, long-lost ancestors of the atoms that make us. The dust that formed 3I Atlas may once have been part of a sun, and before that, part of another galaxy entirely. We are made of the same story, just told in different tempos. So as you breathe now, as you drift between wakefulness and sleep, remember this. You are part of a continuum that began before light existed. Your heartbeat is older than any memory on Earth. Every cell, every thought, is a brief echo of the same forces that guide the stars. When you exhale, your breath joins the ancient rhythm of hydrogen and dust, the same breath that once fueled comets, planets, and dreams. You are not watching the universe. You are within it, moving, becoming, remembering. Somewhere beyond the rim of our galaxy, 3I Atlas continues, unseen, unmeasured, but not forgotten, because forgetting only happens when motion stops, and motion never does. The story continues without us, and that is the most beautiful truth of all. The universe doesn't need an ending to be complete. It just needs continuation, and the quiet awareness of those who pause long enough to notice. Beyond the horizon, everything we've ever loved still moves. The stars, the light, the echoes, the memories, all carried onward by time's slow current. And if you listen carefully, you might hear your own voice among them, whispering softly, continuing forever. Between every star there is distance, and between every thought there is silence. That silence, when that distance, is where everything meaningful happens. The light of 3I Atlas is gone now. Its reflection no longer graces our telescopes, its trail no longer threads through our models. And yet, when the night is quiet enough, you can still feel where it was, not as coordinates, but as presence. A ghostly impression left on the canvas of time. We often think of discovery as a kind of arrival, but the universe rarely offers conclusions. Every revelation is only a door to another mystery, and every passing object, another reminder of how much we do not yet know. But maybe not knowing is a form of grace, because uncertainty, when viewed gently, is not chaos. It's potential, a space large enough for wonder to exist. That's what 3I Atlas left us, a space to wonder, a gap between knowledge and mystery where imagination blooms. When it came, we watched it carefully. When it left, we followed its path into the dark. And when even that trail disappeared, we were left with ourselves, our curiosity, our quiet longing to belong to something infinite. That longing isn't weakness. It's memory, a cosmic kind of homesickness for the place we came from, for the stars that built us. Sometimes, when astronomers look up from their instruments at dawn, they realize how strange it is to search the universe for something that already exists within them. The patience of orbits, the fire of suns, the persistence of light, it's all there. Written in our biology, we are each of us. The residue of ancient collision, molecules born in the death of stars. To wonder about space is, in truth, to remember what we are made of. So when 3I Atlas moved past, perhaps it was not a visitor at all. Perhaps it was a mirror, a moment where the universe let us see ourselves from the outside. Small, yes, but luminous in our curiosity. There is a quiet between stars, but it is not empty. It's filled with the faint hum of background radiation, the afterglow of creation itself. That hum is always there, invisible, constant, like a note the cosmos never stopped playing. If you close your eyes and breathe deeply enough, you might even feel it. That steady, endless vibration that holds everything in place. It is the same hum that exists between moments of thought, between breaths, between dreams. It is what connects the vast and the intimate, the galaxies and the human heartbeat. We often imagine that the universe moves without noticing us. But maybe awareness is not something the cosmos lacks. Maybe it's something it is. The stars burn, the worlds turn, the comets drift, each one expressing, in its own way, the same quiet intelligence that made you pause to listen to this now. Maybe the universe dreams through us, its curiosity becoming ours, its silence becoming our peace. That thought is both humbling and comforting, because it means that even in the smallest act of wonder, We are fulfilling the purpose of the stars themselves, to illuminate. When 3i Atlas left our sky, it didn't end its journey. It continued through the quiet between stars, and that's where this story truly belongs. Not in the data, not in the charts, but in that quiet, in the awareness that the universe doesn't measure time the way we do. It moves in centuries and eternities while we live in moments and memories. But perhaps that is what makes us special, that we can feel awe in an instant. For things that move beyond time, the quiet between stars is not silence. It is the pause before the next beginning. It's the soft intake of breath before a new light ignites. And if you listen, really listen, you might hear that same pause within yourself. The space between each heartbeat, between each thought, between waking and dreaming, that is your own quiet between stars. And in that silence you are infinite. Atlas was never what we thought. It was never just an object or a visitor or a mystery to solve. It was an echo of continuity, a reminder that nothing truly passes, only transforms. It drifted on, and so do we. Through days and nights, through years and centuries, through the endless still motion of the cosmos, each of us carrying our own light, our own orbit, our own soft echo between stars. And when that echo fades, the quiet will remain, patient, luminous, waiting for the next traveler to pass through. Sometimes when you lie beneath the stars long enough, you begin to imagine that the sky itself remembers every visitor that's passed through, that the faint streaks we call comets and meteors are not just stones but stories, each one writing for an instant the word existence across the dark. Atlas was one of those stories. It wrote its line briefly, elegantly, and moved on. But its meaning didn't fade with its light. It stayed here, in the quiet awe of those who watched, in the recordings of photons that crossed unimaginable distances to reach us, and in the minds of those who dared to wonder what it was that drifted through our corner of space. And so, perhaps the real discovery wasn't the object itself. It was what it revealed about us. That we are capable of wonder without ownership, that we can love something without understanding it, that even in our smallness we reach out across impossible distance and for a moment, we connect. As the years pass, 3i Atlas will continue its journey. It will travel between stars, through regions of space so quiet that light itself slows into a whisper. Perhaps it will pass near another civilization, another set of eyes turned skyward, wondering if they too have just witnessed something rare. And maybe, in some distant century, another being will say softly, "There it goes, I'm the traveler. It was never what we thought." The story of 3i Atlas is not about mystery solved, but about mystery preserved, because the universe, in its wisdom, never gives us all of the answer. It gives us just enough to wonder, and that is enough to keep us looking up. We measured it, we questioned it, we named it, and then we let it go. But the letting go was not an ending. It was the fulfillment of what observation truly is, not possession, but participation. The cosmos doesn't ask us to solve it. It only asks us to notice. And when we do, when we watch the faint light of a visitor drift into the dark, we remember something we too often forget. That we, ourselves, are travelers passing through the vastness, briefly illuminated, beautifully unrepeatable. Somewhere out there beyond the reach of light, 3i Atlas drifts on, not lost, just continuing. And here, under the same stars, we do the same. And now, as we drift toward the quiet end of the night, let the story of 3i Atlas settle around you like starlight on calm water. The visitor has gone. The instruments are silent. The sky has returned to its usual stillness, but in that stillness something remains. A trace, a memory, a feeling, not of loss but of alignment, as if a part of your mind now moves with that traveler, sliding gently through the darkness between suns. The night sky is older than anything we can imagine, and yet it is never tired. It waits patiently, holding the soft rhythm of galaxies turning, of light arriving, of sleep descending. If you listen closely, beneath the hum of the earth, beneath your own breath, you might feel that same motion inside you. The faint pull of gravity, the drift of thought through silence, the steady orbit of calm around a still point in your mind. That is how the universe rests, not by stopping but by moving so perfectly that it feels like peace. You are a part of that motion. You always have been. Every atom in you was once light, and every breath you take has passed through stars. There is no separation between you and the sky, only the illusion of distance, a trick of perspective like watching your own reflection move across water. So let go now. Of the noise, of the questions, of the endless need to understand. The cosmos does not demand comprehension. It only invites awareness, and in that awareness and the quiet realization that you are already home. Somewhere out there, 3i Atlas continues its silent journey. It does not know it is being remembered. It does not know it was seen. But it moves, and in moving it fulfills its nature. We too move, through time, through thought, through life. And like that traveler, we are seen only briefly, then carried onward into the next horizon. But what matters is not how long we shine, only that we did. Imagine for a moment that you are drifting with it now. No weight, no boundaries, only the soft pull of stars guiding your path. The vast arc ahead is not empty. It is gentle, endless, patient. You pass through clouds of dust that shimmer like dreams, past invisible fields of gravity, past forgotten light from distant galaxies, each flicker, each shadow, each whisper, a memory of creation continuing quietly without end. And as you drift farther, you begin to realize something, that even here, in the infinite dark, you are not lost. You are simply in motion, stillness at last found through movement. The stars above your closed eyes, the silence around your breathing, they are one and the same. Rest now. The cosmos will continue. You have traveled far enough for tonight. Let the memory of passing become the rhythm of sleep. Let every heartbeat echo with the quiet truth of existence, that you belong to the same story as every drifting world, every wandering light, every visitor in the dark. Somewhere out there, 3i Atlas moves on, and somewhere here, so do you. Good night, traveler, and may your dreams remember the stars.